Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, former President Donald Trump's historic criminal trial set to enter week 2 as the quest to find jurors takes center stage. Meanwhile, back home, House Speaker Mike Johnson journeys to Mar-a-Lago to look for help as calls for his ouster intensify. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. We want to take a moment to say hello to our many viewers watching, as they do every week, on stations throughout the state, including stations in Miami, Gainesville, Tampa, Pensacola, and elsewhere. I am joined today, as I am every week, by my co-host, Emmy award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Doctor, welcome.
Great to be here again, Frank.
Okay, former President Donald Trump center stage in not one, but 2 court cases this upcoming week. The hush money trial, which began last week in New York City, continues this upcoming week. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court hears oral arguments about whether a president has absolute lifetime immunity from prosecution. First things first, jury selection beginning last Monday in former President Trump's hush money trial and is expected to take a few more days. So, Doctor, let's get into the minds of those people who are going to be jurors, and what is the prosecution and defense looking for in a juror?
Well, Frank, some interesting psychology here because they're both looking for different things, okay? Different features when it comes to a juror. Obviously, a defense is usually looking for that one person, or at least one, that's kind of going to be on their team, okay? Somebody who they can relate to. The Trump team, in this case, I'm sure has their own psychologists and body language people, and they're looking for someone who can relate to their case. The other side, the prosecution, is looking for fair-minded, the most unbiased, the most objective person possible, even though that's difficult, of course. But they believe that their evidence is going to be there and they can convict on what they have. So they want somebody who's objective. The other side, the defense, again, wants somebody who's leaning their way.
The president has complained that juror does not exist, the juror that can be objective and look at the facts. First of all, it's New York City, which he claims is liberal, which it is. So can we find people? Can we find 12, or in this case, 18 people that could do that?
Absolutely. And Frank, as a psychologist, I know a lot of people, and I've had some people even as patients and clients, who actually tell you that sometimes they even lean the other way. They may have a negative feeling about someone, but if they've been a juror, they feel like they want to be hyper vigilant and make sure that their own bias or their own personality frame of reference, if you will, doesn't interfere with the decision making. So yes, you can get 12 people who will just look at the case, not the individual personality involved, and make a good judgment.
And
yes.
There's strong personalities involved in this as well.
Yes.
Also, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear oral arguments with regard to whether a president not only has immunity while he's in office, but lifetime immunity, which means that he can do whatever he wants or she wants. In this particular case, this one puzzles me. I don't know how the U.S. Supreme Court, first of all, took this case, because it's saying that the president can do anything not only then, but forever.
Well, Frank, the psychology here is, how about common sense? What is the Supreme Court actually doing? It doesn't make any sense that a president can have immunity. Well, I mean, a president, he or she can steal $100 or $200 million a week from the Treasury to support their own business or family and then be immune? Or maybe have a hit team out there to kill off, would-be opponents? It doesn't make any sense. You're right. I mean, why has it taken them this long to say what they should say based on common sense, not just the law?
It is puzzling.
Yes.
All right, let's bounce back to the hush money trial. Any man or woman who has experienced or been betrayed within their marriage can relate to what's going on. Very little talk about Melania. We do the show a bit earlier in the week, but a story broke today that she's 100% behind former President Donald Trump. You don't see her at the trial. We haven't seen her really.
Right.
As a psychologist, it must hurt her personally that all this information is going to come out True or false, it's all going to come out. And anyone out there, especially a woman who might have been betrayed in marriage, can relate to what's going on.
Right.
What is the psychology of that?
Well, Frank, as you know, I always say, and on this show as well, that people have different sides to their personality, okay? And sometimes their sides, well, we will have sides that need a lot of work. Okay. I know you may be an exception, but with Melania, I think she's trying to make it look good that she's supporting him.
It must hurt her, though.
But I think so. I believe that internally there's another side to her, and she's very hurt. And the perception, that's the optics, if you will, of this case is going to be a real problem for her. And she's out there as somebody who could make it very difficult and put more pressure on the president in terms of this whole case. Yeah.
Interesting psychology.
Yeah.
All right, time now for one of our regular segments, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi we call the Rossi Rant.
And Frank, today I'd like to talk about an article that came out in Politico this week about mental health in America. And it really struck me because the findings indicate that 1 out of every 5 kids in high school are suffering from suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation. And adults in the study are either addicted to opioids or having problems with drinking and alcohol, depression. And the crust of the article was really about the fact that we in America today have a crisis in mental health that is really beyond what most people even believe, okay? And one of the psychologists said in the article that we cannot any longer treat ourselves out of this problem. And I think he's right. And this goes back to what I said here a number of weeks ago, where I think we need a different approach on mental health in America. And that would be to have programming in middle schools and high schools, basic psychology, how to deal with bullying, how to deal with interpersonal relationships, how to really make things work, and have programs so that we don't only emphasize math and science, but mental health. And also, finally, have a Secretary of Mental Health for the United States.
Good idea, and spoken like a true psychologist. All right, thank you, Doctor. Coming up, House Speaker Mike Johnson heads to Florida to confer with the former President Donald Trump, ahead of calls for Johnson to be ousted when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla. I am joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. House Speaker Mike Johnson flew to Palm Beach this week to meet with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. They talked immigration, legislation to require proof of citizenship to vote, and Johnson looked to get the former president's blessing as Johnson faces a backlash in the House of Representatives that may lead to his removal. He is, for lack of a better description, a man between a rock and a hard place.
And Frank, I'm thinking of the psychology involved in that conversation that they had, because the speaker has to be telling the former president, you know, if I don't bring this vote out, for example, on Israel and in particular Ukraine, I'm probably not going to be the speaker. So if you don't want to play ball with me, you're going to be playing ball with somebody else who may be the speaker. We don't know how that is. We don't know how it's looking. So it's an awkward conversation because the former president, wants his way, but Johnson only is going to have a 1-vote advantage in the next week or so. It doesn't make much sense in terms of how much room they have to play.
So what does Trump do? Does he make a phone call to say, look, I don't know who I'm going to get next. I know Johnson, he wants to play ball. All of you who want to, maybe he calls Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe he calls some of the people who want to oust Johnson and just say, hey, you know, we need to keep in place until I'm elected, if I'm elected. Interesting conversation.
I think the psychology here is such that the pressure is on the former president. Because if Trump doesn't want to play ball with Johnson, he has problems. Because how does he control the next person? The optics don't look good. I think it's going in the direction of the speaker bringing these votes out. And we're going to see in the next week if he survives.
Well, Johnson not only has to satisfy the former president, he has to work with the current president, and he has to keep the House of Representatives all herd these cats and keep them on the same page.
And to do it, going forward, he's probably going to need Democrat support, which the far right wing doesn't want.
Again, a rock, hard place.
Yes.
He's right in the middle. All right, Governor DeSantis, we talked about this last week. He has signed that bill banning local heat protections for workers. You know, Florida's hot. I mean, I don't know, sometimes during the summer it gets really hot. I see some of the people working in my community. I don't know how they do it. Employees should allow them a break when it's too hot, give them water and so on, but they're not required to, or it's banning them from doing that. This is a head scratcher for me.
Probably the politics here and the psychology is let's go with the employer, not the employees. Let's look at the
But they're
company.
doing the work. The employees are doing the work.
They're doing the work.
They're in
and
the heat.
They're in the heat. And actually, here in Florida, they're very visible because a lot of people are out there doing gardening and they're doing landscaping and they're doing stuff that's very important for Florida. But maybe this is a step in the direction of the companies and the employer. That's how I read it.
Okay. All right.
Maybe not a good move, but that is the move probably.
Well, you talk about good moves. I got to give the governor some props. He this week is modifying that bill that allows people to ban books at certain school districts. One of the new specifications with regard to the bill is you have to be a parent. You just can't roll in and say,
Right.
hey, I don't have any kids, but I want this book off the shelves. So they modified this bill. It is almost as if the Republican legislature said, maybe we've gone too far on this one because they're being swamped by requests to ban books.
Well, Frank, I read this as a psychologist as maybe a step in the right direction. But what about all of those parents, a good number, who really want restrictions on books and are into banning books?
But why can't they say to their kids, I don't want you reading this book. I'm going to check your phone to make sure you haven't ordered it. I'm going to make sure you don't take it out of the school library or the local library. Aren't they responsible for what their kids read? Shouldn't they?
That's my
Why should
thinking.
you take that away from everyone if you don't want your child to read it?
Exactly. That's my point of view.
I'm on the same page with that. I should be the psychologist.
You can be the psychologist. but I think this has gone, as you just said, too far. And I think people realize that this is a step towards extremism here in Florida, which a lot of people are sensitive to now.
And it's sort of making a mess of what's going on in the school boards because they have to deal with all of this.
Banning a particular book, who decides what book and what issue should be banned? It's really very, very undemocratic.
Also, Governor DeSantis this week signing a bill to make it harder for the civil review boards to look into police impropriety. He says he doesn't want anybody pushing an anti-police agenda. Look, police are people. They're human.
Right.
There's really good ones. Some of them are not so good. I think if they cross the line, and sometimes they do in every state, in every city, in every town, that there should be an independent review board looking at this, and he doesn't want them to have as much power as they currently have.
Again, Frank, the psychology here is being pro-law enforcement. And
Tough
being
on crime.
Tough on crime. And I'm not sure it's really going to work very well because the optics here aren't that good either. You should have a review board. There should be a review of psychologists. There should be a review of journalists. There should be reviews. Everybody should be accountable to something and somebody. And I think this is a step in trying to promote law enforcement.
I'm going to talk about this a little bit in my commentary, which is coming up at the end of the show, but often what we're seeing here is solutions to problems that don't really exist.
Right, exactly.
And we're seeing more and more of it, unfortunately, in the state of Florida. And is the governor running in 2028? He may. Does he need to position himself right now? It's 4 years away. That's a good distance away.
It's a political stance. That's what it is.
Or as you have indicated in the past, sometimes a political stunt.
A stunt,
All
yes.
right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the always popular sunshine or shower segment, when we see who spent a week working on their tan and who got drenched when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. As you know, the weather can change in a moment in Florida, so every week we span the great state to find out who enjoyed the warm rays of sunshine and who needed an umbrella. It's time for the always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers. Okay, Doctor, who this week was in the sunshine?
I have a relationship between sunshine and showers.
A connection?
Yes, and first off, I will say that I am putting April 15th in the showers.
In the shower.
I think everybody hates tax season and April 15th, and I do especially. I just don't like it. I don't like the tax system. I don't think this progressive taxation works. I think people are sick and tired of it. So April 15th in the showers.
Okay. I think that's a safe bet.
That's a safe bet. For
tax day in
most
the shower.
people can agree with that.
99% of the people agree with that.
And how about for you?
Oh, you're
in the
asking me who
yeah,
was in the sunshine?
showers, yes.
Hey, I got to put Congressman Tom Cole from the great state of Oklahoma in sunshine this week. He is going to be taking over the Appropriations Committee in the House. And, you know, call him a rhino, call him whatever you want. The guy says, look, I have to work with both sides. That's how things get done. And he is liked by both sides. He's an old-style politician, which we need more and more of,
Right.
who say, look, I can disagree with you. I can agree with you. I can disagree on another subject, but we can all work together. He's probably the antithesis of Marjorie Taylor Greene in that he wants to work with everyone. So he's from the great state of Oklahoma. He's the first, there are several now, but he was the first Native American congressman in the House of Representatives, and now he's the head of the Appropriations Committee, which doles out a lot of money. So, Congressman Tom Cole, we give you the props today. You're in the sunshine.
Somebody who knows a lot about compromise.
And knows how things work.
The art of compromise.
That's right, which is the definition of politics.
That's right.
Okay. It's your turn to ask me.
I will now ask you.
We have to keep rehearsing this until we get it.
I'm asking you. Now, give me your showers.
I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the commentary upcoming, but I have to put Ron DeSantis in the showers this week. I'm sorry. He's spending a great deal of money trying to keep Haitians who are struggling with civil unrest on that island nation. It's an impoverished country. He's, in my view at least, wasting a lot of money with all these officers and boats and ships and so on to keep maybe a raft from going the 700 miles from Haiti to Florida. I don't know if that's a good way to spend money. We have something called the Coast Guard, and again, I'll talk about this in my commentary. So the governor, even though I gave him some props earlier in the show, he's in the showers.
Okay. All right.
Governor DeSantis in the showers.
Okay. I am putting in the sunshine, so we could end the show on this, okay?
On sunshine.
All of the politicians on the right and the left who are for a flat tax or a consumption tax. I like the consumption tax because there's no taxation. And what happens is you just tax items that are for sale. No taxation, I mean, in terms of the IRS. But I think there are ways to accommodate people at the lower end. And then with a consumption tax, what you have is no one filling out forms for the IRS. You pay your tax when you buy that shirt, the tie, your watch, and you pay a tax, and that's it.
I have to respectfully disagree. We've had long, hour-long conversations about this. A flat tax will never work. A consumption tax, will never work. It can't work. You can't generate enough money. Businesses will probably do something to make sure that the government doesn't know. There'll be some impropriety and so on. It's not going to work.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Look at the impropriety now that's going on. I mean, I think it would be a better system.
All right, thank you, Doctor. It's time for a break. When we return, a commentary by yours truly titled "Let's Be Frank," when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. One of the most important things a governor can do is direct what money the state legislature provides him or her to help those in need, to identify causes and programs aimed at improving the health and well-being of that state's residents. In fact, the job of any elected official is pretty basic: make things better. I bring this up because of a couple of foolhardy expenditures in Florida that now seem like money that could have been spent more wisely. In an effort to position himself as a governor who's tough on immigration, Governor Ron DeSantis has spent millions of dollars that certainly could have gone to better use by creating and funding the so-called Office of Election Crimes and Security. It spent almost $1.5 million last year and is scheduled to spend more than $2 million this year. That's a lot of money trying to track down a minuscule number of voters who in at least half the cases appear to have voted with no criminal intent. In fact, an investigation by a news outlet in Orlando discovered that last year the multi-million-dollar Election Crimes and Security Unit uncovered only 4 instances of people who voted illegally. 4 votes in a state that cast nearly 11 million votes for president in 2020. Then there's the governor's much ballyhooed effort to prevent Haitians fleeing civil unrest in that impoverished nation from ending up on the shores of Florida. Haiti is 700 miles away. Florida, at the direction of the governor, is spending millions on 250 officers and soldiers assigned to South Florida, not to mention a dozen air and sea craft, to basically do what the Coast Guard does already, and with its budget, probably a lot better. Is this really what the state should be spending taxpayer money on? Since the next presidential election is more than 4 years away, maybe the good governor from the great state of Florida should concentrate a little more on what needs to be done here, instead of more political messaging and searching for expensive solutions for problems that don't exist. If Ron DeSantis wants to run for president in 2028, more power to him. In the meantime, maybe we could use the money we, the taxpayers, give the state for programs and policies that benefit us, not him. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time on this same station. Have a great week.